Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, and I call the workshop of the Victoria City Council to order. Our workshops are informal, and with that, we will dive right into our agenda. We have one item on the workshop agenda this evening. It's our 2022 budget discussion. We will cover fees and charges and department overviews tonight. Ms. Hardy, why don't you kick us off this evening?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We're happy to be here this evening. We have two things that we're gonna do, and the fees and charges will come at the end, but before you this evening is our department directors, and we'll be going through and sharing some of our stories, our cost savings, our operational efficiencies, and you'll hear a little bit about the departments and what they do and how that fits into the bigger picture here this evening. So with that, this is our part of our budget process, and as you can see here on our 6-month calendar dates here, we're on that second row, fees and charges and cost savings and operational efficiencies. So in August, we'll be back to talk about maximum tax levy. In September, you'll have to adopt your max tax levy. We're required to do that by the end of that month. In November, we'll be talking about our enterprise funds and our capital funds, and then you'll be giving us some direction on preparing our final budget, which needs to be adopted in December. So this evening, we want to talk to you about the culture of continuous improvement. We talked a little bit about this in our strategic planning session. We've got a great team here, not just those before you here this evening, but all staff. And we truly do have a culture of continuous improvement. And at the city and in the public sector in general, we're not really good about patting ourselves on the back about the things that we're doing. We've got a great team. They're all really great at their jobs. And we take our fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers very seriously. And with that, they're always looking for those operational opportunities to improve and those cost savings, and we don't always pat ourselves on the back. So this evening, we want to share some of those stories with you and some of those highlights. And when we go through this, we want to make sure that that you all know these are just snapshots. There's a lot more stories and a lot more things that are happening. And I think each department could probably talk several hours about the things that they're doing, but you'll hear 2 or 3 different highlights from the year, and as we go through here, you'll be hearing from all those departments. But when we talk about that culture of continuous improvements, there are some things that are shared across all of our departments, and those things are partnerships, shared resources and equipment, grants, the multi-year budgeting. Some examples of those partnerships are mutual aid agreements, cooperative purchasing agreements to make sure we're getting that best deal possible. Our partnership with the School District 112 with the Rec Center is another example that you're all very familiar with. Sharing our resources and equipment, one of the examples includes our GIS position. That's a shared position that we purchased through the county, staff time and resource. With 4 other cities, also our street sweeper. We share that with the county and the city of Carver. We research and apply for grants, and so all of our departments have done that, and you'll hear some examples of those here tonight. And that multi-year budgeting allows us to plan for future expenses and take advantage of those opportunities when we know that we have expenses coming and we have some of those savings at the end of the year. When we have those budget savings, those general fund budget savings, council in March, you generally make the decision on how to allocate those funds. And we will make suggestions to reduce future year levies, and you've done that already in March. One example was the fire truck engine purchase. And that helped reduce the levy. I think, Trish, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we presented our preliminary budget, where are we at? We were at 12.5%, and some of those decisions that you made coming out of last year's budget with those savings helped reduce our levy coming into the preliminary budget. So. Before I pass it off, you're going to hear from each of the departments. They'll spend about 5 or 10 minutes giving a little bit of a highlight of what they do, how their departments and the things that they do fit into that bigger picture or mission of the city itself. And then they're going to highlight those cost savings and operational opportunities that they've leveraged over the year or are looking to leverage. And then you're also going to hear about some of those budget pressures that are specific to their department that you have heard or you'll continue to hear as we go through our budget discussions. So with that, we're going to start with administration, and I will pass it off to Alyssa.
Good evening, Ms. Swanson. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I am pleased to be here presenting on behalf of the Administration Department this evening. Just to provide an overview of the Admin Department, we encompass a wide scope, including legal, IT, and the Office of the City Clerk. Briefly, our goals and our responsibilities include overseeing the day-to-day operations of the city, carrying out the directives and policies of the council, working with the departments to ensure we are continuing cross-departmental communication, and then moving that needle forward on the 3-year strategic plan. In addition, we focus ourselves to enhance service delivery and to create a process culture within the organization. Now for budgetary pressures in the administration department, and I'll quickly read these and then come back to them individually, but consist of the pressures of a growing community, IT hardware, software, and network maintenance, network and cybersecurity, and potential legislative changes. As the community grows in population and as we venture more into our annexation areas, we are needing to ensure that we are meeting the level of service that is expected of our new residents, but still maintaining and even enhancing the level of service for those that already call Victoria their home. We are a lean but an extremely dedicated and hardworking staff. But as we grow and those levels of service increase, it's still important that we are an enticing place to work, and we avoid employee burnout, and then we provide our staff's time to look into and dig into those overarching strategic priorities, such as diversified housing and environmental sustainability, to just name a few. We've created a staffing plan. The 2022 potential changes or potential staff increases were presented to you by Dana Hardy, City Manager, and Tricia Pollack, Finance Director, at the last budget workshop, and more information will be provided to you in the upcoming months. Keeping on that same path, but diverging a little bit, when we look at service delivery, we're not just looking at the increasing levels, but we're also focusing on how we provide those services. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it opened a new world and changed how constituents want to interact with their governments. And this goes for myself included. There's this expectation to be able to communicate with your local government the same way as you would be able to book a medical appointment or pay your bills online or go grocery or clothes shopping. Now, once we receive census data and once we go into or push out our citizen surveys, we'll be able to really understand who our residents are and then determine if we're meeting that level of satisfaction for our service delivery. And then from there, we can divert our resources to improve those. The next on the list is IT maintenance. All city staff, spanning from our HR department to our public works team, utilize some form of IT hardware and or software, and these digital tools are key and essential to doing their day-to-day job. For new city staff, we see right up front the cost of the initial purchasing of these products. That includes workstations, that includes city phones, as well as the licenses and the softwares to really work into those computers and phones. But we don't always see the things that are going on in the back end, such as continuation of end user monitoring, endpoints, antivirus and anti-malware security. We also have additional costs for just the maintenance of our network, the creation of our backups, the cost of digital storage, and of course the insurance and the warranties to keep those safe and secure. And speaking of security, a large topic that's been on the news lately is cybersecurity due to the increasing levels of ransomware and malware attacks on businesses and government agencies. Unfortunately, hackers are becoming more creative with every hack attempt, so it is important that we partner with our IT vendor Atomic Data to keep ahead of the game and implement processes that will keep our endpoints and our data safe. Now, when we think about network security, we're kind of always thinking in the digital realm, but there's that part that you have to think about the physical security of your IT infrastructure, like the servers, the actual switches, everything that's in those IT data closets, and even our workstations. So while we're looking at the future years, how are we going to ensure that all these actual physical pieces to our IT are safe from, weather damage, from things like misuse, things from theft. And then last on this list is legislative changes. At the beginning of this month, the state legislature came to a close with the adoption of the state budget. This included several omnibus bills that may have potential impacts to city governments. Our legislative partners, LMC, Metro Cities, as well as city staff are diving into these chapters to see exactly what those impacts might be, and we'll be bringing forward these potential changes to you in the future. Next is cost savings and operational efficiencies. This past year, we've integrated process workflows into our Laserfish software, which will help streamline the document filing process and eliminate staff time to do this. We've also incorporated a contract management software into Laserfish, which will notice contract administrators on upcoming renews, upcoming deadlines, possible sunsets, rather than that being a manual process. City Clerk Cindy Patnode reviewed documents in our cold storage this year and was able to remove about 75 boxes in compliance with records retention. This will overall lower our monthly cold storage bill. And then we've also taken advantage of government and voluming licensing through third-party vendors for software such as our Microsoft O365 programs and our Adobe products, which will also significantly lower the cost per user. And then as we continue to grow, of course, we'll continue to look for ways to bring cost savings to the organization. And then for highlights under the administration department, first we have employee engagement. Like I mentioned previously, we are a very hardworking team, and to continuously ensure that our staff are doing our best, that we avoid burnout, we avoid turnover. We want to make sure that Victoria is a great place to work and that it provides staff with the tools to be successful. This year, with the help of the HR department, we sent out multiple surveys, some for employee wellness, some for engagement, to really gauge how we can improve on this front. And then we're reviewing the results and anticipate launching some sort of engagement program at the end of this year and then continuing that on. Next, we have strategic meetings. Created last year were management team meetings, and these continue on throughout this year, and we anticipate continuing on for following years. These are to focus the overarching organizational projects and ensure that we're getting all the department heads' voices at the table. In addition, we want to make sure that we're using the most cost-effective and efficient processes possible. Then we have the IT planning meetings, which start in November and will continue biannually. These are one-on-one between the department heads and the IT department, or myself at the moment, to determine upcoming technology needs for each department. So then we are leveraging all the technology investments that we have, and there's no duplication of efforts between departments. And then this year we have the Senior Advisory Committee that was created, and they have the goal of advising the city on ways that we can better serve the 55+ community. This committee has taken the year to focus on enhancing the city's communication efforts, specifically looking at how we can share with our citizens the regional, the local, the state resources that are out there. And one approach that they're doing is creating kind of a one-stop shop for all these resources on the city's webpage. And then supplementing that, they are creating a printable packet for those that prefer that paper format. And then that project is currently underway, and we anticipate formally launching this at the committee's Senior Resource Expo, which will be held in October of this year at the Lions Pavilion. This will be a new event for the committee. It is free and open to the public, and we're currently working out marketing strategies, and we anticipate having that advertised in the upcoming month too. And now we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit about elections. As City Clerk Cindy Patnote is taking minutes this evening, I will be presenting this section on her behalf. But Cindy, if you have anything to add, feel free to hop in at any moment. So Minnesota elections are very tied to a community's size. As we grow in population and geographically, there might be a need to add additional precincts. We're also waiting for census data, which will determine redistricting of the state. It's anticipated that redistricting will occur in spring of 2022, which will affect the following primary and general elections, and staff are aware and keeping updated on that. But even without additional precincts to administer elections to all of our residents, the ones that have been here and the ones that are new, we want to make sure that they have a positive election experience and that they know that the elections were completed successfully and securely. With this, there might be a need to add additional equipment such as voting machines. There might be a need to add additional election judges. And then with the increasing population, we will have to account for the cost of those ballot printings. And then for highlights, I'm happy to say that in the last election cycle, there was 100% voting accuracy. We also had a record voter turnout in Victoria with approximately 95% of Victoria residents participating on voting day. 51% of those were absentee ballots. And then this key to success is really from our election judges, specifically our head election judges. This year we had Michelle Hammers, Jane Stelek, Flock, and Cindy, I probably butchered her name, so my apologies. Kathy Beaver and Carolyn Bjorlin. And with that, thank you again, Mayor, Council, for allowing me to present this evening, and I will conclude and pass it along to Chief Hager.
Terrific. Thank you. Chief Hager, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you. So I get the opportunity to highlight the work of the fire department tonight. And while some of our work may seem obvious, there's some behind the scenes work that goes on as well. But kind of the three components of the fire department and what services we do and what we provide for the city. Obviously, we protect the health and safety of our community in an all hazards approach. And what I mean by that is it's so much more than just fire protection. We're out there doing medical response, response to vehicle accidents, hazardous materials incidents, any type of rescues, anything like that. So that's kind of the front-facing stuff. In addition, kind of another method out there that we're protecting the safety of our residents is through code enforcement and plan review and inspections of life safety systems. So sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, proactive inspections, items like those are not as often viewed visibly in the public. So that's some additional work that we're doing. We provide public education to minimize the effects of these hazards. In a normal year, our staff will put anywhere between 300 and 500 hours in dedicated just to public education outreach type events. Last year, obviously, was an anomaly, and that didn't happen, but we're on track to hit some of those numbers again this year. And most importantly, we do all of this and we serve our community with integrity and compassion when we're carrying out those activities. So some pressures related to our budget. We've seen a significant increase in service demand this year. And if we look back historically over a 10-year period, we see about a 3% annual call increase. Looking at the numbers as of last week, year to date, we're up 23% over 2019 and 2020. So we've seen a significant increase in service demand for those emergency incidents. And I think there's not one specific item that is driving that. It's just a combination of fires, medicals, rescue type events that are all driving that number up. And we're expecting that number to continue to increase as the city grows. We've seen some significant increases in our infrastructure and equipment costs, and I think that's most evident by the recent fire engine purchase. We saw a significant increase in raw materials that are used to construct that truck, with cost of stainless steel up 256% alone this year. That's something we're going to continue to expect to see, those rising increases in the apparatus, the equipment, everything like that we're using. In addition, the infrastructure, when I say that, I mean obviously physical infrastructure. Through the Space Needs project that's going right now, there will be some recommendations coming forth in August for council's consideration as investment in that infrastructure. The next thing then is our staffing needs. As you're aware, today we are a combination fire department. I'm the lone full-time employee, but everyone else is considered a paid-on-call firefighter, so they all have jobs and work outside of the fire department. That model will have to change to help support that growth. And that's not tomorrow it's changing, but as the city continues to grow over the coming years, we'll see that model evolve into more of a duty crew staffing, where we're still utilizing those paid-on-call folks, but it's probably more in a predictable, scheduled model instead of the random, sporadic type of calls that may come in at 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, something like that. So we'll continue to see that need driving forward. And then mandates and standards. We are an industry that is very driven by standards and recommendations, specifically out of NFPA. And that tells us anywhere from how long we can use a pair of gloves to how we should be training. And these mandates and standards are on anywhere from 3 to 5 year cycles, and they're constantly changing. So as those standards get updated, we'll see additional costs and requirements come forth out of those. So some of our cost savings and our operational efficiencies. The first one would be some creative purchasing opportunities, and I think the last 2 fire trucks we've purchased now, we've been able to take advantage of some pretty significant savings when it comes to purchasing those trucks to help reduce the overall cost to the city. We also continue to utilize any options that are out there as far as joint powers agreements, other contracts that are made available to us that we're a part of to help reduce those overall costs. We also are pretty aggressive in going after grants. So we've had a handful of smaller grants this year, same last year. We've been able to pull in some significant dollar amounts over the years to help reduce some of those overall costs. Our operational changes, we're constantly looking at how we can better our service to the community. And we do that a couple of ways. We have a very good relationship with our mutual aid partners and work closely hand in hand with them to deliver the best service to our community that we can. So we can't staff for all these larger scale incidents. We don't have the equipment or the personnel to address some of these large scale incidents on our own. So we rely heavily on our mutual aid partners to help fill that role, and they're really good about doing that. So we're constantly working on making sure those relationships are intact. When that incident happens, there's no hesitation, and those partners are coming to help. We also are looking at what our activity codes, and what that is how our fire department is dispatched to serve the community. So we're actually in the process of reviewing those right now, but we will try to fine tune those codes and make sure that we're serving the community the best route possible, but also doing that most efficiently as possible for the fire department. So we'll utilize our resources the best we can in doing so. And then our training is also, we've taken a step back over the last couple of years and really refined our training, kind of got back to the basics on a lot of things and really focused in on some of those training skills for our staff to make sure that, again, when that time comes and they have to put those skills to use, they're ready to go and don't hesitate to jump in. And then we've made you'll see highlighted later, but we've made an adjustment in some of our fees when it comes to the plan review and inspection to try to get some of the contractors to better utilize our resources, and made a little incentive for them to schedule inspections as a group instead of one by one. So it'll reduce our number of trips that we're making out to conduct some of these inspections, and it also gives a little cost break on their fees. So we did that based on some feedback that we got from some of the contractors. So with that, I'd like to highlight some of the work that our staff has done over the last year or year plus now, but obviously in March of 2020, when the pandemic really started hitting here, it was kind of unknown territory for a lot of people. And I'd like to say, just recognize the work that our group did throughout that and continues to do. This team did not have the opportunity to work at home or anything like that, and not a single one of them hesitated to continue providing that service throughout the pandemic, and they're still doing it today. So I'd like to just take an opportunity to recognize those folks for that. So with that, I will turn it over to Kendra to talk on communications.
And before Kendra starts, it's important to note that Chief Hager was our go-to guy when it came to the pandemic. You sat in on all those meetings that were being conducted and leading the way as we learned what this was all about. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
As well.
Thank you.
Kendra, welcome.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me here today to discuss the communications department and budget. Over the last year, the communications department has grown to one full-time employee that works exclusively on communications and public engagement. As that full-time employee, even though I may count as more than one human at the moment, my efforts are centered around sharing information related to the city of Victoria, increasing opportunities for engagement, and showcasing the unique experience of living, working, and playing in Victoria, Minnesota. Although it is a department of one, the communications department is extremely interdependent with the other departments you'll hear from tonight. I rely on the other departments as I collect information to share or promote, but I also provide communications services to them as they have their own needs for communications engagement outside of the centralized communications for the city. The main budget pressures that the communications department will have over the next 1 to 5 years are impacted by Victoria's potential population growth. First, increases in Victoria's population means an increase in quantities needed for the communications department. This could be the number of prints needed or the number of people in attendance at events or programs. For example, as we add new neighbors in Victoria, it will increase the costs associated with both copies and postage needed for the city's printed editions of the newsletter. Second, increases in Victoria's population means an increase in communication services needed. I'll discuss this on the next slide, but we've been able to bring many of the communications-related contractual services in-house to reduce costs and create efficiencies. As communication needs arise, it'll put a strain on the department to fulfill these needs. This may result in an impact on the budget. And finally, an increase in population increases the communication channels needed or how we communicate. We will need to adapt to make sure we are communicating in the most effective manner, which may come with an impact as well. A big part of the last year and a half has been dedicated, or last half year has been dedicated to strategically aligning the communications department. One way to reduce costs is to ensure that our decisions are strategic and fit into the objectives of the communications department and the strategic priorities of the city. Some of the cost savings related to this approach include a focus on quality content that can easily be shared so we can reduce our need for paid advertising. Another focus is on reducing print needs. An example of this includes supplementing our quarterly printed edition of the Victoria Spirit with a digital version that can be sent out in between the print editions. This keeps our community informed in the interim, and no additional cost is needed with the exception of staff time. One of the bigger cost savings items is that we have reduced the need for contractual services by bringing them in-house. This includes services like design, photography, and videography. This is actually a cost savings across departments as it reduces their needs for communications-related services as well. It is also an operational efficiency as it reduces the time and money associated with draft reviews and edits. Instead, we're able to streamline the process to get a speedier, more flexible turnaround on items. And our third focus is on the importance of our community partners. We have a number of amazing partners in our community that enable us to save money while also increasing the efficiency of staff time. These collaborations go both ways as we're able to find partners and sponsors for our events or programs, and we're also able to partner and sponsor on their events and programs. Communications isn't just about sharing information. A large and important part is public engagement. On this slide, I'd like to spotlight one of our communications efforts for the summer, our community engagement event activity. Hello Victoria is an engagement activity to get the community involved and interested in discovering what makes Victoria a unique place to live, work, and play. Throughout the summer, city staff are engaging with the community while exhibiting at a variety of community events, like concerts in the park, Discover Victoria Classic Car Nights, Victoria Farmers Market, and many of our Parks and Rec organized family events. As part of the Hello Victoria activity, staff ask community members and visitors to share drawings, words, or phrases that describe Victoria from their point of view. We've received a lot of great feedback so far, including from the younger members of our community. We have some of them on display today over there, but we'll also be hanging these boards up in City Hall at the end of the summer so everyone can view them. This activity has also been a great way for city staff from across the departments to meet with and engage with community members, and for community members to meet them, often putting a face or a voice to the name they have heard before. The city has done an amazing job at adapting to service needs over the past year by creating new ways to provide services in a digital format. But we also want to make sure that we're keeping that small town atmosphere and engaging in person as well. This Hello Victoria activity has given us the opportunity to do that this summer. Now I will pass it on to Anne.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Mackey, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. The Parks and Recreation Department, I'm going to focus on three different areas, parks and trails, recreation and special events, and the recreation center. The city has roughly 27 active and passive park areas, totaling close to 300 acres of parkland. And then we also have these little, I'll call them special little nooks, such as the skate park, the Charleston Thune Bandstand, our community gardens, that really we use them as park areas, but other facilities where we have programs. We do have 45 different community gardens, 25 at the Recreation Center and 20 out at the Holy Family, which is a new partnership last year. And we're really excited about both of them because they have been full since inception. So we were very excited about that. One of the other programs that fall within that Parks and Trails area is our EAB program, the Emerald Ash Borer program. This will be our second year of treating boulevard trees, and we also provide that service also to private landowners that wish to also treat their trees as well. So the recreation program is run by the recreation supervisor, Holly Koffold. We generally serve roughly 3,000 people annually within our programs. We usually offer in that 100 to 125 different recreation programs throughout the year. Obviously, 2020 was again, as Andrew put it, I don't even know what you said it was. Challenging. Challenging. So recreation programs were rather difficult to run, but towards the end of the year, we were able to manage a few. We did have a concert in the park, but the programs were taking a hit. But we do partner, a lot of our events are partnerships with Carver County. We partner with Chanhassen and Chaska Recreation departments and offer year-round programs to all ages of people. And this year, really, we put an emphasis on those 3 to 5-year-olds, and it's been interesting. We're running a lot of different camps for them this year. Is that based on some of our survey work that had been done previously? That's one of the age groups that we really, wanted to focus on because that was the group that seemed to be missing. So it's really quite interesting to see them out playing football and soccer at 3 years old. Their attention span is not very long, but it is a lot of fun, and the kids seem to be really enjoying it. We also partner with the fire department and Carver County. This year, I think it's this week, doing a truck rodeo, actually Thursday night at the Recreation Center, if you're interested in attending. We'll be allowing kids to, from the public works side and the fire department, to get in the trucks. I don't know if you're going to let them drive them, Dave and Andrew, or not, but we'll be showing the kids and parents vehicles that we use in our day-to-day operations. When we just had Family Fun Night this last Friday night, we had Holy Family present with a booth. We bring in a lot of people from outside to provide that event. The theme this year was Cars, so we played the movie Cars. Unfortunately, it was about 105 degrees, so the attendance was a little bit low this year, but still people had a really good time. Concerts in the park, we partner with the classic car folks and provide concerts. We also do some lunchtime tunes and then other movies in the park. So the recreation department is really putting together a lot of different programs for the community. And then the last area is the recreation center. The recreation center was built in 2003. Partnership with school district, add on a second sheet of ice in 2008. So that building is getting to be close to 20 years old. We did memberships. I just took a look at our memberships from obviously from last year's not a very good comparison because we were shut down a fairly good chunk of time, but we're only about from 2019 at this time about 63 memberships down and about 59 members off of what we were back in 2019. So we're happy with that. We're seeing people coming in and joining again. We do offer a ton of fitness classes, daycare, and we do have room rentals and for the rooms and the gym rentals that we'll be picking up this fall. Some of the budget pressures that I see that will be going on in the future, one really has to do with park and trail maintenance costs over time. We have a lot of facilities within the community, and some are 40 years old, some are 10 years old. But the Park and Rec Committee took a really high-level look at those things that we have out there. You know, it can be fencing and benches and picnic tables, garbage cans that all at some point are going to need to be replaced. So we did a 5-year, a 10-year, and out to 25-year look at what we expect the maintenance costs to be if we're going to maintain to a standard that I think that the city would like to. Our current budget is about $756 per acre. We projected about $1,300 per acre, and the national standard is about 15 per acre. But you see what the gap is once you start getting out 25 years. If we don't make some adjustments to the system, there'll be some decisions made, whether that be no garbage cans in the parks or one picnic table per shelter. So that I see being a pretty good pressure on the city as we move forward out into the future. Trails is the same way. We did do the trail gap study, but we also have 32 miles of trails existing today, and that keeps growing with each development that Marty approves and you guys approve. So that I see being a long-term concern, and so also the recreation center is that it's the main part of the building is going to be 19 years old next year, and it has maintenance, and so that's something that we are tracking and trying to keep on track to make sure we're doing improvements and not have one major year of $1 million worth of improvements. So trying to make sure we spread that out over time. Staffing, we continue to add programs and increase participation, and I don't see that going down as we add more people to our community. So that also will be a pressure as we move forward. So some of our things that we do to try to save costs and operate efficiently, like I said, we partner on a lot of different programs with other entities, both public and private. We're trying to be good partners with Three Rivers Park District. This facility, the bandstand, is on their property, but also with other communities. We also work on soliciting partnerships and donations for our programs, and also look to volunteers to offset some of our costs throughout the year. We do get a lot of scouts that are doing projects for us. We use Sentence to Serve on some of our maintenance. So that's one of the areas that we try to utilize that as well. During COVID, we weren't open a whole lot of the time, but in order to try to save some costs, we did cut staff and limited building hours when we opened back up, and limited purchases to the best as we could that only got what we needed, which was a lot of sanitizer and face masks. So, we tried to minimize the amount of purchases that we made out at the recreation center. A couple of the things that I really wanted to highlight, Wasserman Lake Preserve, I think is a highlight that I think will be stand the test of time when it comes to park facilities and things that the community will enjoy. But I also want to thank our staff, all of our staff, that during, when we resumed back from COVID, we had people come back in, and they had to make a lot of changes and adjustments to how we interacted with the public, and they spent a lot of time cleaning machines, every hour cleaning machines, also cleaning door handles and bathrooms, and so yeah, they have done a really fantastic job, and would like to thank them as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, Ann. Mr. Shoger, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, I'll quick go through what we've got here. A quick overview we'll start with of the Department of Public Works. So we've kind of spoken several times recently, I suppose, but we'll go over it again. Our Public Works staff is made up of 10 full-time employees, supplemented by a few seasonal staff. Members come in and work on everything from park maintenance to sewer and water needs, as well as stormwater, snow removal, and some facilities maintenance, which is our newest position that we've created in the last little over a year now, since we brought in our first full-time facilities maintenance person. We maintain 48 miles of paved roads, as well as 53 miles of sewer and water. And as Ann mentioned, we have 27 park areas. We've got about 17 that we actually mow very weekly at least. But in addition to that, we've got all those other areas too. So we've got plenty to do for our staff there. Budget pressures. So our budget pressures, kind of very similarly to everybody else, as mentioned, the increasing population in our growing community. High demand for water is going to create needs for water processing, water treatment plant processes in the future. So at some point, right now we're fine. We have plenty of capacity in our plant, but at some point we will need added storage. We will need added capacity in our plant. So eventually we'll get there. We kind of saw, we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the end, but certainly some of the limitations of our plant and our distribution system when we've got a really high demand of water. So that growing community will also correlate to need for added staff and additional space. We will be talking about that, as Andrew mentioned, in August when we have our space needs presentation come forward, but that will require additional equipment, additional people, break room, storage space. In addition to that, one of our biggest pressures is our stormwater system. So our stormwater system is regulated by the DNR, and they have consistently and frequently made additions and new recommendations and now new requirements for how we treat our stormwater. So with that come along new processes that get developed by our engineers and by the developers for processing and treating our stormwater. Some of those things are a little untested for us anyway, as far as maintenance goes. So those things are going to require some additional expenses, I'm sure. One of them is iron enhanced filtration basins, and these filtration basins, the iron that's placed in these iron-enhanced filtration basins attracts phosphates, which is found in our fertilizers and also decomposing leaves, things like that. So help keep that water from going into our natural bodies of water. So that, among many other things, are places that our stormwater system is going to be continuing to add cost and pressure on our budgets. A couple of places that I'd like to highlight some cost savings and operational efficiencies that we have developed over the past year or two within the Public Works Department. We had previously been using a contractor to come in on a 3-year rotation to clean all of our sewer lines in town. So we've about 70,000 feet of sewer line gets cleaned every year. That leaves about, after those 3 years are done, about 70,000 feet of storm sewer that wasn't getting, or not storm, rather sanitary sewer that was not getting cleaned just because it was newly developed and or off-road. So in addition to that, we also do televising of all these sewers. Budgeting for that was a problem. We only had budget for about 40,000 feet of televising out of that 70,000 feet that was getting cleaned. So we kind of had talked through what would be a good way of making sure we're getting 100% of our sewers cleaned and televised. And we realized that we could add a 4th year into our cycle, not change our budget a whole lot, kept it relatively flat, and provided 100% coverage of cleaning and televising, as well as going to all of our newly developed areas in our 4th year, which will be, and as well as being able to address our off-road areas. So one of the great things that we were able to do is find a way to get that done, and I think that that was a good compromise in getting that work addressed. In addition to that, we were able to save some money with our new composting program that we've got. So over the past many years, we had used a sanitation company to haul our composted waste out via some roll-off dumpsters. The cost was roughly about $15 a cubic yard. We found a vendor who was able to come help us with this and haul it themselves for $6 a yard. So a great amount of savings there, which is going to allow us to open up our compost site for a little longer, add a little more capacity in our system for having our residents be able to use our compost site, as well as save some money. So it was, again, another good compromise there. It saved some money. And one other thing that we've done recently, we had used a vendor that had been working on repairing our manholes. So our sanitary manholes, we have to inspect them every year. We do inspect them frequently. And occasionally they have holes that develop in them. Groundwater will start penetrating into them, and it's called I&I. So infiltration is really what we're looking for. And we have used the company that comes in and they repair our manholes, and we had roughly about $25,000 budgeted annually for that process. And we've been able to bring that process in-house, get our utility guys trained and ready to do that work. And proud to say we're well under $10,000 a year now is where we are in doing that work. So saved quite a bit of money there as well. So some good efficiencies. I'd like to now talk about our quick highlight for our department, and it's very near and dear to me and probably all of us. The pressure that was put on all of us with the watering ban that came in. This drought has been pretty hard to manage for us at times, but I think we were able to work as a group very well to address that 3.7 million gallons a day peak that we ended up seeing, which was far above anything which we had seen before. So made several changes in programming within our water treatment plant and our processes to kind of help manage when our process was working. Our backwashes as well as our filling of our reservoirs was all addressed to kind of help manage the timing in which our peak use was happening. So that helped address some of that, as well as all of the calls, as well as from myself, as well as the office staff here. We're pretty much inundated every day with calls upon calls upon calls with very unhappy residents, with one getting citations from either not following the ban or the restrictions, as well as just questions about how we can move forward. So I'd like to thank everybody very much for all of their help with that and their support. It was very, very nice. So with all of that, we've Kendra helped a lot with the communication, sending out a ton of public engagement and public education material to our groups and our residents, and proud to say that we've gotten our outgoing water down to about 2.6 million gallons a day. So it has gone up a little bit this week, unfortunately, but it's extremely hot and dry, I suppose. But it has, on average, gone down to about 2.6 million gallons a day. So about 1 million gallons a day savings just over that public outreach and education. So we've done very well with that. So that's all I have. We will go on to Marty with community development.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dahl, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Yes, here to talk a little bit about the Community Development Department and some of the things that we've been up to and will be doing as we move forward. So as most of you probably know, our area has two different divisions. We've got the building division, which includes one building official, one permit technician, and two inspectors. That area, overseen by Scott, is in charge of permitting and inspections for all building-related items. That includes any new homes, remodels, renovations, structures, anything that's related to building is going to go through their office for permits and inspections. And then the planning and code enforcement area, which would be myself and planning and code technician Isaac Peterson, as well as some consultants that we use to help with some of that work. In the area of planning, we're looking at all of those same building permits for planning and zoning items, including setbacks, fences, swimming pools, accessory structures, impervious surface, tree preservation, etc. Code enforcement is one that is always hot and heavy, especially in the spring and summer of the year. We are a complaint-based department, so we're not out proactively looking for code violations, but we do get plenty of calls from people who are observing them. That keeps us busy looking at those types of things. In addition to that, we do development review. Contrary to what Ann says, I don't approve the developments, you guys do, just to clarify. We do development review, zoning code review, amendments. We maintain business relationships and economic development initiatives, etc. So kind of sticking with the trend that you've heard this evening, one of the biggest budget pressures has to do with our growing community and specifically the limited people resources in our area with that growing city. With development comes more building plan, permit reviews, development review, which is extremely time intensive and a very detailed process that has multiple steps, as you see, as they're brought before you and the Planning Commission. And each of those steps, more people typically means more code complaints and issues that we are dealing with. We're tasked with several ordinance revisions and those types of things. So again, very, very much tied to our growing community and the need for additional people resources to help with that. One of the biggest things at this point in time is that with all of the day-to-day type activity, it leaves limited time for some of that broader, more strategic economic development initiatives, affordable housing initiatives, some of that more high-level strategic planning stuff that we'd like to spend some time on. A second budget pressure are potential legislative changes. Now, of course, this one is a little bit out of our hands, but as most of you are aware, there's been some pressure at the legislative level from groups like Housing First that are looking to limit the city's ability to collect adequate fees for building and development type initiatives. So that's a potential budget pressure that we continue to monitor and make sure we're on top of. And then number three is just a need to continue to stay on top of technology, especially in the building and planning area. So I think we do a pretty good job of working with the systems and the technology that we have in place and trying to make sure we're on top of things and keeping efficiencies. But that's something that's just going to continue to grow, is a need to modernize and stay up to date with technology, things like online permitting, virtual inspections, those types of things. So some of those cost savings and operational efficiencies in our area, one of those is the increasing opportunities for online permits. So we have been spending some time using our existing software and trying to implement as many online permit opportunities as we can. So that's something that has been ongoing for the last year plus especially with COVID and less people coming in face to face, trying to be able to provide those opportunities to submit permits and review permits and provide permits online. Another item that we are working on currently is reviewing and updating all of our city permits and forms. There are several permit applications, form applications that are several years old, some of them with outdated information, which just generates additional calls, additional staff time trying to work through some of the issues that some of these forms have. So by working to review and update those, we're hoping to provide a more efficient process for the customer and the resident to be able to get through those permits without having to spend as much time going through them. And then third, we are in the middle of a more streamlined process for development review. I know that in this area, there has been a lot of turnover in the last several years, so there's been a lot of people sitting in my chair, each one doing things a little bit differently. So some of that development review and the process and what needs to be done and who's doing what has changed a lot. So we spent a lot of time last year trying to hammer down that process, getting something documented, making sure we met internally and talked through that. So we've got a much more efficient and streamlined process that not only helps the internal administrative process with those developments go faster, but also helps and ensure that things don't get missed or forgotten, which then causes a bunch more work on the back end if you're going back trying to fix things. So, it's been the elephant in the room that we've been talking about, the growth in Victoria. So my highlight slide is about that growth, and just kind of want to point out the number of new lots that either have been approved or are currently in application since January of 2020. Sometimes when you see these things come in, you just lose track of the collective number of them that have all come through. But since January 2020, the City Council has approved 176 single-family lots and 71 townhome lot units. Those are all final plat approved and are currently in the works. There are 49 single-family lots that have a preliminary plat approval, which will be before you this evening for final plat approval. And then with sketch plats, we've had 152 single-family lots and 103 townhomes that will be coming before this group in the Planning Commission in August at preliminary plat. So all said in the last 2 years, and assuming that these other developments do go through, we're talking about 377 single-family lots and 174 townhome units. Just for internal use, we typically think around 3.5 people per single-family lot and 2 people per townhome. So I didn't do the math, but you could do the math pretty quickly how many more people that means just in the last 2 years. And with that, I will pass it on to Kara.
Welcome.
Good evening,
Erin,
Mayor.
how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It feels like we got kind of the fun parks and the great communication stuff, and then you get down to engineering and finance. So,
You dynamic, we're
I'll
tired.
try to keep you awake here. So just a little bit about the engineering department. So our department consists of me, who you see frequently, but I'm supported pretty much full-time by 2 different individuals at our firm. So Mark Sholey is a senior municipal engineer who lives in Chanhassen and has three boys. The youngest is in high school, the 2 are older, and he's very handy on issues in the city because it turns out he knows everyone. So even though he isn't a Victoria resident, he went to school with so many people that every drainage complaint he goes on, he's like, oh yeah, we go to church together, and it's fascinating. But then Jeremy Stalser also helps us out. So he is a engineer in training, so he's not yet a licensed engineer. He works very closely with city staff, spends a lot of time with the planning department, helping out with permit review and things of that nature. He is also the person that is the eyes and ears for myself and Dave and Marty for all those plats that Marty just described. They move into construction, so he's actually on site through the construction process to make sure that the work is being implemented and constructed consistent with city standards. So that's specific to public infrastructure. So sanitary sewer systems, water systems, stormwater systems, really just making sure that the contractors are meeting the city standards for how those things get installed. Mark, on the other hand, gets to, lately, for the last 2 years, spend many hours reviewing all of the plan sets that come in with those plats that were approved. So, you're talking about a 100-plus page plan set that has to be reviewed in detail, often multiple times, to again make sure that the infrastructure that's being proposed to be constructed is consistent with city standards. So, so that at the end of the day, when we're accepting the infrastructure, we're confident that it is what the city expects from the development community. We do often access other shared resources from my firm, so there's just a list of other folks up there. Our company is a relatively small company, and when we were formed, we really were formed with the commitment of continuous improvement and creating operational efficiencies for our clients. So from our previous background, we had seen that there was a little bit of gap in the ability to provide that service to this size community more efficiently. So that's really in our core value of everything that we do in our approach to work. So the other area related to engineering is the professional services pool. So what we have in place with the City of Victoria is the city has a professional services pool where you're able to access a whole lot of different engineering expertise to meet your needs. So, you know, that's more consistent with what you see in a larger city. So like the city of Egan, where I live, for example, they have an engineering pool in place in addition to the department that they access. So for any major infrastructure project that the city has, we put out a competitive request for proposals, and we review those proposals and make recommendation to the city council for awarding professional services to consultants with really a best value perspective. So you don't have to make that selection based on low cost because you want to do what's of the best value for the city. But through that competitive process, there's a real cost savings that is gained by the city by having that competition in place. My team also prides ourselves in being excellent project managers. Project management has always been something that's we're very passionate about and we think is very important in terms of making sure that those projects are delivered on time and within budget, and then you're not seeing a bunch of, you know, budget overruns after you've already authorized the project. So we have a whole set of systems and processes in place that we use that I will not spend 10 minutes walking through, but these folks have an opportunity to see a lot of that on a day-to-day basis. That list on the right is all of the firms that are currently in your pool. The ones highlighted there are firms that have been utilized in the last year. So two different areas of budget pressures for the City Council to have to grapple with in the coming years that I wanted to choose to highlight was just a reminder about the future mill and overlay projects. So with that growth of the community, we've built a lot of new roads over the last 20 years, both through new construction and then reconstruction of existing roads that were significantly older than that. All of those roads are going to need to have a mill and overlay completed on them in the next 20 years. So looking forward for the next 10 years, a little bit less, we have identified about $7.5 million worth of overlays that are going to be needed in the next 10 years. And the plan to fund that is through the long-term street maintenance fund that if I grab the correct number, has a projected 2021 balance of $1.23 million. So, you know, we're going to have to be working over the next 10 years to make sure that we can adequately fund that mill and overlay work. You spend a lot of money on streets in Victoria based on the soil conditions that you have. So it's an expensive asset that you want to be sure to maintain. If you don't stay on top of a mill and overlay program and a maintenance program for your roads, you really aren't protecting that investment that was first made back when the road was first built. So that'll continue to be something that you'll hear us speak about, and certainly is something we're working very close with finance administration on from a budgetary perspective. The other area though, and this is new for the City of Victoria, so this is a graphic that we had our consultant partner put together coming out of all these transportation corridor studies that you've all experienced. So the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan and the County Road 11 corridor study that's happened there. The Arboretum Area Transportation Plan, as an example, when we presented that previously to the council, there's $206 million worth of investment needed for transportation improvements in and around the City of Victoria. And that's to accommodate growth and to minimize the amount of congestion and safety issues that we're seeing. So we're all hearing about car accidents and are concerned about different intersections from a safety perspective. Part of what's driving that is increased congestion. So it is exciting to me that we actually have a plan for transportation improvements finally in Carver County and in this area. Historically, we didn't, and people would call to complain about congestion on Highway 5, and they'd say, why do you keep approving new plats? And I said, because Marty wants to, so that's why we do that. But you had this added population growth, but no real plan to deal with the infrastructure. So it's great that there's a plan for going forward, but the city has a city cost share associated with every one of those projects. And that's projected to be about $13 million for the projects that you see on the screen there. So we've started conversations with finance and with administration to try to start to figure out what funding tools we're going to be able to have to come up with our share. This $13 million already assumes that the share of the county's gas tax has already been applied to the project. So there isn't going to be a lot of opportunity for outside funding for this $13 million for these projects, so we're going to have to work on figuring out how to fund that. Then lastly, what I wanted to do was just to take a minute to highlight that the City of Victoria has always had a really strong commitment to infrastructure. It's not interesting. It is not anywhere near as fun as Ann's stuff. It's maybe a little more fun than Dave's stuff. I don't know, depends on your perspective. But, we don't see the infrastructure other than the roads, but there's all that important stuff underground. And the city has always been committed to making sure that it is constructed well, but efficiently. So what's an efficient approach to laying out infrastructure? How can we best maintain that? And that's pretty remarkable. You hear a lot about failing infrastructure all over the United States, and it's really rewarding to work in a place where I can say, ours isn't falling apart. So the budget pressure will be to continue to prioritize maintenance of that, but I do think that's something that the city should be proud of, even though it's not as interesting as parks. And with that, up next, finance. Thanks.
Thank you, Kara. Thank you. Ms. Pollock, are you going to come to the
I am going to be presenting from here. I have a different slide deck that I need to bring over.
All right.
So let me put my glasses on. Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This year has been a lot of changes for the finance department. We have taken on the HR into our department and taken it out of the admin department. It also has added one FTE, full-time employee. We were very lucky that we had an excellent opportunity to hire a human resources intern earlier this year. And he took on a role in our HR department full time. So Theodore Frid is his name, and he is working out very wonderful for our department. Some other things that have changed is our utility billing. We were doing utility billing kind of as within one of our finance roles. Now we're separating that out. It's going to be fully funded through the enterprise funds, and we'll be talking through a lot more of those changes and how that affects the enterprise funds in 2022. But we're pretty excited to move towards that goal of the monthly utility billing. And we've been able to really enhance our customer service for utilities and for City Hall front desk support. Having Teddy on also, he's been working on some grants, we're excited to say, and we also have our very first wellness committee that's been funded through a grant, and we've also developed to start having quarterly staff meetings with all staff, and that has brought on a lot more employee engagement and wellness opportunities, and also some training that we can do on a quarterly basis. Other highlights include our new budget software that we just started up in this past year. The 2021 budget book was the very first online interactive budget book that we were able to do. It increases transparency with the residents, is much easier to read, reduces errors. We're not taking stuff out of Excel and copying it over into a Word document. So it's really saved us lots of hours. It's made that process so much more efficient. On the HR side, we're looking at an applicant tracking software change. It would automate our hiring process, make it more fluent. It would enhance our customer service so that we're able to vet through applicants more efficiently, and would save time for our HR staff to work on other activities. And also in the utility side, currently we read 2 different types of meters every quarter. So it's just a much more time-consuming process. So we're working towards getting all of our meters onto one system, and it's much more automated to use those newer updated meters. And we'll be able to work on water conservation programs and outreach to our residents. We'll be able to read those. At one point, we'll be working towards being able to read meters like from our desks, so we don't have to have Public Works go out and do the move in and move outs every day. So we're really working to make that process more efficient and much better for our residents in the end.
Trish, we've been working on that for a while.
It's been 9 years, so
How close are we to getting there?
we're about 800 meters away out of about 3,500 total. So we're really going to be working up a plan, which we'll be talking about later in November when we look at enterprise budgets, to come up with a plan where we can make that transition and get all on that one, the Neptune meter. Yep. So now I'm going to kind of slide right into the fees and charges for services. So as you can see here on this chart, property taxes are really our revenue base, 80%. Charges for services is those fees such as the building permit fees and whatnot, and the other sources would be like any government aid that we might get or grants. So we're really limited on raising a lot of the fees because most of our fees come from those taxes. So we look at our market cities. Every year we're making comparisons, making sure that we're not way under, we're not way over, that we're kind of like blending in the middle somewhere. And then also other things that can affect our fees and revenues are, legislative fees set by International Building Code. We go by what they have for building permits. And then we also like to try to have the fees be self-supporting when possible. And then our utility fees, again, we'll discuss more the utility side in November, but Council has seen, or a couple of you have seen the plan for the, from the rate study that we had done in 2020. So we'll be basing some of our discussion in November on that rate study and what staff is recommending for those changes in 22. So we have a few proposed reductions in revenues. Cable franchise fees, I'm proposing a decrease of $10,000 because we found that there's less subscribers, so the amount of revenue that we're receiving from MediaCom has been going down annually. So we kind of need to adjust that or we'll just come up short. So I'm budgeting $10,000 less in that area. Investment revenue, I'm decreasing by about 50% of what we had been budgeting. Investments have been very low on the, our CDs that we've been investing in. They're just not offering the CDs like we had. And a lot of our better paying CDs are now maturing or been called on since the investments went on the downturn. So we're decreasing that by the 20,000. And then also para-aid, we didn't get it last year, and so I'm taking it out of 2022 because we haven't received anything for 2020, and that again is like a state aid. So those would be the reductions. For new fees, we're adding the tree replacement cost. It's actually basically a transfer from what we had in our code. So now we're just putting it on the fee schedule. So it's not that we weren't charging it before, but we were charging it in a different way through the code. So this gives it more flexibility if we need to make changes, because we look at that fee schedule and bring it to council every year. So if we need to make changes, there's a little more flexibility to do that. But that will be $100 per caliper inch, and the trees are normally 3 caliper inches, so our fee would be about $300 a tree. And with the market research that Marty has done, most of the cities are doing about $400 a tree, so it puts us just below that of our market cities. And this revenue gets coded to our tree replacement fund, which pays for what Ann had mentioned earlier with the Emerald Ash Borer efforts and program that we're doing. So that's where that revenue shows up. Other proposed fees are in the donations part for the parks. We're proposing that the tree donation go from $600 to $700, a bench and plaque from $800 to $2,000, and picnic tables from $1,200 to $1,400, just due to price increases for those items to cover those costs. Some proposed changes to building-related fees. As Andrew had mentioned, the NFPA 13D plan review and inspections. He had explained to you about the cost savings in his department to be able to go and do those inspections if they could schedule them together. If we were to do so, if council would approve that proposed change, we would go ahead and reduce the 2022 revenues by about $5,000, which is about half of what is in there currently. Our billing official recommended a change on the redecking to go from evaluation to a fixed fee plus a plan review. Again, it has more to do with the cost recovery of those services rather than the valuations that can get pretty high on some of those redecks due to the cost of the composite material that they're using now compared to wood. Just a couple other that our building official recommended on commercial permits, the basic furnace and heaters. He recommends we go again from valuation to a fixed fee for those same reasons as I mentioned on the other one. Building permit and plan check fees were increasing $83,000, which would account for those additional home permits that we're anticipating or projecting, given Marty's approved lots, that we should be building more houses and be able to collect those fees in that area. So that's,
Direct all your complaints to Marty.
yes.
I'm doll.
I don't want to feel like I left him out. This is just showing our current fees that we are charging, the 3-year average, and then our last year's this year's current 2021 budget, and then our proposed 2022 budget. Most fees we do base on a 3-year average. However, again, like when we look at the building permit, new home permit fees, we will look at what we know is up and coming, and we may adjust those numbers above or below the 3-year average. But typically, most of them are based on a 3-year average. And then just to touch on the utility franchise fees. So last year, we updated our utility franchise policy to allow those revenues to be used to pay for the Wasserman Lake Preserve, the debt service payment. So the fund was originally, as most of you know, started as a revenue source to fund the utility undergrounding projects. Since implementation, which was in 2016, the cities utilized that franchise fees for 3 different undergrounding projects, which were County Road 11, Rose Street parking lot, and then Steger Lake Lane going east. So with the development of the downtown west looking more probable in the next year, staff's recommending the use of the utility franchise fee funds to underground Steger Lake Lane going west and the downtown west area. If there in the future aren't any other anticipated undergrounding projects, then staff would recommend utilizing those funds that we would collect. But for non-essential but highly regarded projects such as parks and trail gaps, those types of projects that the community is normally asking for. So, and by doing that, we can reduce our levy in future years because we would need less of a transfer, for example, going into the trail gap fund if we could use franchise fee revenues instead of a transfer from the general fund. So staff aren't recommending any change to increase or decrease utility franchise fees for 2022. As you can see, I have a projected revenue and expenditures. The expenditures are the bond payments to pay for the original bond on the undergrounding. And then also it includes the Wasserman Lake Preserve bond. So we still have those excess revenues that we can use towards other undergrounding projects unless council would decide to use those revenues for other projects. So this is where I close, and Dana is going to take over and go through some of these discussion items with you to see what your thoughts are. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Thank you to all of you. You did a great job.
Yes.
Ms. Hardy, you want to lead us through the next part of our agenda?
Be happy to do that. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So as, well, just coming right off of Tricia's presentation, you saw and heard some of the fees and charges that we are proposing for 2022. And we're just utilizing this time to check in to see if you agree with those proposed changes to any of the revenues, fees, or charges that you saw here this evening. We'll start with that one.
Council, thoughts on revenues, fees, and charges, working backwards from Tricia's presentation?
Anything? No. I'm pretty happy with the way it was presented, and I really, you're making my work a lot easier. Thank you. Thank you. This is excellent.
Other thoughts, comments? No? It's a lot to digest. And I think speaking for myself, I would love to have this presentation so I can sort through it a little bit more and understand that. And, you know, at first blush, it looks great to me. You know, we're such a growing community, and so some of those things move at a different pace from year to year. So just having the opportunity to review that and still being able to reserve some judgment about whether we think they're too high or not enough, or where we are. Councilmember Gunderson, any thoughts from you?
Happy with the way things are.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Roberts?
I agree.
All right, very good.
Mayor, members of the council, and to that point, Mayor, you will see all of this together, kind of come together as part of our max tax. And then we will continue to refine, and we continue to have discussions throughout the rest of the year and before the final budget. So you'll see this several times. You'll have lots of opportunity to give feedback, weigh in, give direction. But we're happy to get the presentation to you. For the sake of time, I'll kind of skip over. It sounds like with the utility franchise fee proposal for the undergrounding, when we were going through the presentation, I think I saw everybody's head nods on a desire for us to pursue or at least explore the undergrounding of utilities for Steiger Lake Lane when we reconstruct that. So I'll just do a quick check-in to make sure I was seeing that correctly. And then with that, we've talked about this before with undergrounding. For us to get a more exact estimate from the Xcel Energy Company, we do have to pay them a fee. The last time we checked in, it was $5,000 or thereabouts. So we would propose utilizing the funds from that utility franchise fee to get to that cost estimate if we're going to move forward with that as a project.
I think that's very wise. The council is agreeing with me here. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead
And then
find out what that looks like.
Happy to do that. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. And then finally, you see this question for each of our budget presentations. Is there any additional information that would be helpful in your policymaking?
One of the things that I would be interested in knowing is, as you are out and about this summer and talking to residents, and we do community surveys and get lots of different feedback through committees and other ways, do we hear anything that residents are saying, here's a gap in our services? What does that look like? Is there something that maybe we are not aware of where residents are saying, if we had this?
Mayor, members of the council, I would invite you, and I know Kendra invited you earlier to look at the boards that are back there, and you'll see some of the themes on there are park amenities and trail gaps was the one that we're hearing a lot of. The grocery store did make it on there, which shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, so that we did see that. But I think overall, we're not really seeing any gaps in our service, but just the things that people love about our community is the sense of community, the great restaurants, the festivals and events that we have here, the community events, the parks, the park amenities, the lakes, the trails. Those are all themes that have risen to the top. I think ice cream made the list about a dozen times just recently, so that was fun to see too. So just a quick feedback. And then while Kendra's here, not here, the wood plaques that are on display in the back there, I just have to give a nod of kudos to her. She built those, all of them. Aww. So not only is she talented with her communications skills, but is a talented woodworker as well. So,
my goodness, great. And again, for those of you watching at home, go out and find us and follow us and like us and engage with us on social media. It's really the greatest, most efficient and timely way to get information out of City Hall. And she does an amazing job with that. So go out and find us on all those places and follow us. Council, we have to wind it up here because we got to get to our regular council meeting, but any last thoughts or any additional information you are looking for from city staff as we go through the budget process?
Good.
I'm seeing nothing at this point. All right. With that, if there are no further discussion, we have no more items to come before us for the workshop, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. We'll be right back with you